Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Brodo Fantasy Football Podcast presented by BrodoFantasy.com and the Fantasy Football by Brodo app, the only tool you need to dominate fantasy football.
What up, what up? Like, share, subscribe, download that app for free. Google Play, Apple Store. You know what it is. Follow us on patreon.com/BrodoFantasy. I'm your boy at PsychWardFF. I can't even get my own name right. I'm so excited. I'm with Nick again, my homeboy over here. Always, Crunch Time Live, here to answer any and all last minute start sit fantasy football related questions and any questions for that matter. Pop in the chat. Ask your questions. We are going to get to all of them before the show is out. Usually we end 1 hour before kickoff, but again, if you guys got the questions popping off, I'll stick around as long as you guys need. We're going to do some injury notices and news and some sleepers and busts throughout the episode as well that we've written about this week. But we'll, as always, pop it off with news and notes, get through some of these injuries. I'm going to rapid fire through some, and then we'll give our thoughts on a few of them as well. We got Pat Fryermouth out, Treylon Burks out, T. Higgins officially out, Elijah Mitchell officially out, and Juwan Johnson. Yeah. Officially. And Juwan Johnson officially out. I should have known that, of course. Doubtful and very much unlikely to play these three guys: Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley. Questionable: Javonte Williams, who did get a full practice in, Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, expected to play, guys that had the questionable tag earlier this week, that, have gotten in full practices or at the very least limited practices and are positively trending towards playing, are guys like Ramondre Stevenson, Kyron Williams, and the vet Odell Beckham Jr. And officially active, the two big ones, obviously off the top, Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor, who I assume will be in question abundance today, with waves of positivity towards their outcomes. Jimmy Garoppolo active after missing a game with concussion, after playing the entire game as well that he had suffered that concussion. Once again, a little bit bad on the NFL's part missing that one. Kenny Pickett did get a full practice in, is expected to play after worst case scenario was immediately assumed with that knee injury, instead not missing any time at all. Rashad Bateman expected to give it a go. Luke Musgrave, who was cropped up in the injury report as well. Derek Carr, of course, who will probably remain on the injury report for the remainder of the season with that AC joint sprain. But obviously they don't think he needs to sit out, even though he literally can't throw the ball anywhere beyond the line of scrimmage. And then Matt Stafford, our kingmaker, who is one of our sleepers this week. We'll probably get into him a little bit as the episode goes on. Hopping into the first comments, which are always the good mornings that I love to see. We got Tom Brady Stan, #GOAT in here. Good morning, fellas. You know it's your boy. Bright and early. Happy Sunday. He's got Kupp and Puka. Nobody wanted to trade for Puka. So should I keep them both in or give Rashee Rice or Bobby Trees a go instead of one of them two? I think you got to keep them both in.
Yeah, I agree. I will say that Robert Woods does have a pretty good matchup against Atlanta, who struggles to stop players in the slot, and with most of the attention going to Nico Collins and Tank Dell. He's a sneaky play. I know a lot of people that I listen to for fantasy advice and stuff like that love him for DFS. So however, I agree. I think you got to keep Puka and Kupp both in. We know how Stafford rolls. He's a funneler. And I mean, we've seen Puka getting funneled historically. We've seen Kupp get funneled. So at this point, it's probably them and then a mix of Higbee and Tutu and Kyron Williams. But yeah, long-winded way to say yes. I would keep them both in.
Yeah, and you're kind of it's a weird game theory, but it's also like you're covering both ends of the spectrum. Like you're covering the floor and the ceiling. And obviously I don't think Cooper Kupp has an insanely high floor in that scenario. Obviously I'm referring to Puka as kind of like the big ceiling guy at the moment, because you don't know how those targets are going to play out. We have to assume that if Kupp is good enough to go, even on snap limitation, he will be utilized in a serviceable manner for fantasy. So I definitely want to get him into lineups and keep him in lineups. It's going to be a very high baseline for do I start this guy over Cooper Kupp? It would have to be a fairly high baseline for me there. And I, want to also just go on that contingent a little bit as well, is I have Bobby Trees in a lot of lineups, and he was like a pretty easy kind of flex pivot for me on some of these, mid-range flex guys that are boomer bust plays. I really think that Bobby Trees has a big game here. And, kind of, I guess, going further into that injury news and like the Stafford and Kupp both coming off the injury report, I genuinely think that this Rams offense is good enough to keep up with anybody, and obviously have a pretty positive matchup coming in this week.
Yeah.
Where, yes, historically a great defense and a very fierce pass rush, but the Eagles secondary has been absolute dog buns to start out. Big Will, my boy, gentlemen, good morning. Good morning to you as well, my friend.
What up,
and
baby?
Then from Tom Brady, Stan, #GOAT, always going to say the whole name. Should I also find a replacement for the Philly defense if I go Kupp and Puka? Somebody like the Texans and Colts D is available. What you think? Yeah. I mean, I'm not really... The Phillies defense, other than those sack numbers too, have kind of been a letdown as far as like fantasy defenses are concerned. I wouldn't mind like streaming through that positional roster spot throughout the rest of the season. I think the Texans are a pretty sneaky one this week for sure. Yeah, I think I would prefer Texans over Colts D. I definitely a stronger defensive unit as far as the first 4 games have been concerned in general. So that's where I would lean.
Yeah, the Colts personally have done nothing but burn me so far this year when I thought that they've had good matchups. And especially if you're playing a defense against Derrick Henry, it's always kind of scary because he can fuck up your defensive day all by himself. So I if I were in this situation, I don't like making moves like this on Sunday. I did it last week and it burned me pretty hard. If I've been sitting on Philly's defense all week and we're here now, I know news has changed with Cooper Kupp and stuff like that. Me personally, I would just ride with him. Stafford has no mobility. He's going to get sacked. You're going to have a floor in that sense. I don't know if your leagues go negative or not, but I also don't think the Rams are going to put up enough points to even get to that. I mean, like you said, they have been getting torched. Don't get me wrong, but that front is so good. Stafford's mobility is already limited, and then he has his like hip, I think it is, whatever injury he's got going on now, which will probably just hinder his mobility even more. And if it flares up, he may not even finish the game if he gets sacked twice. So it's a defense, but I can say the Texans defense on paper has a great matchup against Atlanta, who is abysmal. So
yeah,
I don't hate it. I just don't. I've got PTSD from making too many moves last minute on Sunday that have hurt me more than helped me. So it's kind of just like it's a personal bias.
That's what we're here for. And I'll go a little further into it as these questions get funneled into us. We got a few in here, Big Will, Ryan Mullen. I'll get to you guys immediately. But I love talking defenses, and on paper is right. But like statistically, the Texans are also 12th in total yards, 11th in total points, 9th in passing yards, 19th in rushing yards. So the way that they're beaten is definitely on the ground. So I'm looking at a big day for Bijan Robinson rushing, a few sneaky like DFS or best ball, plays where you're going to see Tyler Algier in some lineups, I guess is the point that I'm trying to make, where he might have some touchdown upside there. But yeah, I also think that they can, like Jalen Peters, awesome, and Devin Sing or oh man, now I just forgot his name. But either way, it's a very strong. Yeah. Stingley, there we go.
Yes,
because it's Singletary and Stingley now on the same team. But yeah, like a really good young, solid secondary have been obviously showing out and showing up against teams this season. So I like streaming the Texans in over Philly, who I will push back a little bit on Big, but completely agreed with everything there. They do have a floor for sacks, and Stafford is immobile and just getting off the injury report. Big Will in with his first question. We're sure we'll see some more. PPR wide receiver 3, he needs a fill-in. Michael Wilson, Cortland Sutton, or Jameson Williams. Bad choices, but that's what I'm here for.
For me, I'm going to take the bait on Michael Wilson. He's been playing better every week, and he's been playing not only better, but well. He's been getting targets. He's been earning targets. He's been producing with said targets. So I would probably take the upside with Michael Wilson here. Cortland Sutton, I just don't love the matchup. He's been staying afloat with his touchdowns, and everybody in the Twitter space keeps saying he's going to stop scoring. You have to sell him high. We don't know that's true, but I'm not going to bank on it in the situation against the Jets. And then Jameson Williams, you're looking at 1 catch for 3 yards or 2 for 75 and a touchdown. Like,
Yeah.
I'm stashing Jameson Williams. This is a desperate time, but I don't think it's desperate enough for a desperate measure such as Jameson Williams. So for me, I probably try Michael Wilson out here, but it's between him and Sutton for me. I'm not really considering Jameson Williams, even with the Amon-Ra and the Gibbs news. It just feels too risky for me right now.
Yeah, I'll try to be the tiebreaker, I guess, and say that I think it's also Michael Wilson, even with that Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown news, like was coupled with a public announcement that Jameson Williams will be on around a 20 snap count. I think Michael Wilson, there's definitely some sneaky play there. The Bengals are an interesting matchup, obviously like short favorites on the road against the Cardinals, but have looked absolutely terrible. The defense being the brightest spot there, but I also have Zach Ertz as one of my high-end sleepers this week. So I think Michael Wilson, for all the reasons that I would list Zach Ertz as a high-end sleeper, has the same utility there. Cortland Sutton also against the Jets, maybe a bit of Sauce Gardner shadowing there where he does play the true X and Jerry Jeudy's more of the floater. And also, speaking of, CeeDee Lamb being more of a floater is really the only wide receiver that's had a positive game against the Jets this season. They did, obviously lose to the Cowboys in that outing, but once again, are a quarterback shy from being one of the most dominant teams in the NFL because that defense is rolling and they look really good. And Sauce, he got cooked up by Lamb when Lamb would rotate to the outside on those little press motions, but other than that, he is as advertised. So I think that Michael Wilson actually is trending in the right direction. Rondale Moore, as much as I love him, is trending in the wrong direction. They just can't play him on 2 wide receiver sets, and they need to run the ball. So Michael Wilson showed his utility and, does have pretty decent draft capital from a dynasty standpoint too. So I think as somebody that could like stick around and actually find a very succinct role within that offense as we continue on through the season. Big Will back in with his second one. I mean, I said that he was going to ask another one without even reading on, but here we go. PPR tight end pick 1. Jonnu Smith, Darren Waller, or Luke Musgrave, who did get a full practice in, should be a good to go player. And the Packers are playing the Raiders, if I'm not wrong, on Monday.
Yep, Monday night.
Okay, perfect. I would have felt dumb. But we're playing the Raiders on Monday, who, definitely a pretty exploitable secondary.
Oh gosh, it's like yucky. So Waller has been a big letdown for a lot of people. And unfortunately, I'm one of those hard-headed people who is like, I'm an eventually guy. Like eventually something's got to give, and you would hope in what we are expecting to be a negative game script for that team, there should be more passing volume, but Miami's been pretty solid against the tight end, and he's been terrible. That whole team has been terrible. And Musgrave is in a beautiful, beautiful matchup and had been getting really solid work before his concussion. Jonnu Smith has been getting more volume than I care to admit as well.
Yeah. And is a top 11, right? He's the tight end 11 in points per game right now.
Yeah, he's up there. It's like, but that being said, Houston on the flip side has been stingier toward the tight end position on average. In this situation, I would probably go Musgrave. I know Christian Watson's back. I know because he was out when Musgrave was performing better, and even I think Romeo Doubs had some stuff going on, but like he's had a rapport with Jordan Love in the preseason. It's pushed into the regular season. He's coming off his concussion.
Seemingly a very safe PPR floor, and we are talking about that point per reception format. Now, obviously, Musgrave not putting out and putting on like Sam Laporta, for example.
Right.
But yeah, man, there's nothing wrong with 4 for 38 or 5 for 48. And in tight end premium PPR leagues, I didn't. No need for the tight end premium.
I remember it was week 1 or week 2. I think it was week 1. Like he was wide open for a touchdown down the seam that would probably have made him a top fucking 10 tight end at this point. And he just got overthrown. So, not to hold on to past plays, but he has big playability and he could have had better finishes in the past. So with the best tight end matchup in 2023 right now, and Monday Night Football, I would probably plug in Musgrave in this situation. It hurts to sit Darren Waller because you expect eventually he's going to do what Darren Waller is supposed to do, and maybe it's this week, but I'm out on Darren Waller right now. You know, you got to look past draft capital at some point, and like not his draft capital, but where you drafted him. It kind of doesn't really matter anymore. It's who's putting up points, who's producing, and who's got the good matchups if nobody's really producing. And I think Musgrave is my play here. I've never been a rookie tight end guy, but he's shown the ability to make plays, and he's got a good matchup. So, I'm going Luke Musgrave here. I don't feel great about it, but that is my answer. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And there's a laundry list of negative narratives to place blame upon when it comes to Darren Waller's lack of production and the dysfunction in the Giants offense for that matter. But all of those narratives can start and stop with Daniel Jones, who's an absolute mess right now. Another fumble loss. That makes 24 career fumbles. That's the most by any player since he's entered the league in 2019 and the most by any quarterback in a 4-year span in NFL history.
Sweet.
He's had 0 touchdown drives in 3 of his 4 starts this season. So played 3 of the games that Daniel Jones has played, he's failed to mount a single touchdown. And against the Seahawks in week 4, obviously not great. 27-34, 2 touchdowns, a game-sealing 97-yard pick, sacked 10 times. And Darren Waller led the team in snap percentage of all players, 92% of the snaps, 8.8% target share. Yeah, the Dolphins are favored by 12 points at home. That's an over-under that combines for 47.5. The Giants being a 12-point underdog usually is a good thing for tight end production, especially when that tight end is leading the team in opportunity share and snaps. But they're also averaging negative 9.7 points over average to the position. So, yeah, it's just I'm not into Darren Waller. I think he's somebody that you got to stash on your bench and just hope that the Giants fix the holes in their offense. And I do prefer Musgrave for a PPR ceiling over Jonnu Smith here. Ryan Mullen, 1 wide receiver, 1 flex, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Breece Hall. I think I'm going to go with Wilson and Hall.
Yep.
And a lot of that comes down to Darren Waller's shoulder.
Derek Carr's shoulder.
Yeah, Derek Carr.
I also saw. I don't know if Olave's been nursing an injury or what. I haven't seen him on the injury report, but one of my buddies who's a Saints fan and he's going to the game sent me like a pregame warm-up of Olave, like talking to a trainer and like hobbling around for some reason. So even I know that he had got taken out of
insider information
out of some plays a couple of games ago. Maybe he's dealing with something low key that's just kind of nagging. I don't know. So, but yeah, the matchup is I guess better for Garrett Wilson. I mean, he's getting volume out the ass, and we love to see that. And it's even though
Broncos.
And it's against the Broncos, I've talked about Pat Surtain on the show a couple times now, and he's just been getting cooked from what I've seen. So I'm not too worried about it. I think it's going to be an interesting game. I don't love starting 2 Jets in the lineup, but when your opponent is the Denver Broncos,
I think it's actually a good spot to start those 2 Jets specifically. And Olave is obviously nobody's a bigger fan than me. Both, Dynasty, Saints, all of it. But I really don't like the situation that offense is in. And with Kamara being healthy, it seems for whatever reason that Pete Carmichael and Dennis Allen are completely content with operating behind the line of scrimmage when it comes to their passing offense. And obviously, Olave's entire upside relies on the fact that he might literally be, without exaggeration, the best deep ball tracker in the NFL.
Well, yeah. And it should be noted, even with Carr's injury last week, like Olave did have 150 air yards. And I know one of them was, and air yards are shit, but it's still.
One of them was Jameis Winston's one snap, just going YOLO and chucking it 62 yards for a pick. Yeah. I mean, that was. I love Jameis Winston. I love Jameis Winston. That makes me love him even more. Right. That makes me want him to start over Carr even more.
Yeah, but I'm not giving. I'm starting Olave where I have him this week just because it's Chris Olave. But I totally understand. Like it's a really tough situation.
And I do think that Wilson has a very decent PPR floor, and obviously the ceiling is sky high for any player against the Broncos defense right now. Ryan Mullen back in immediately afterwards with a bench one, Barkley, Ramondre Hall. I think this one's obviously pretty easy, as Saquon Barkley is very unlikely to play.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Barkley on this one.
Yeah. But we always, we got to answer all of them.
Right.
No such thing as dumb questions, only dumb people. Tom Brady, Stan, #GOAT, Romeo Dubs or Michael Wilson at the flex spot?
I'm going Dubs.
Yeah, me
in
too.
this case.
Yeah, me too. I think he's shown enough that, in all honesty, especially at a flex position where we're assuming that you have better players at wide receiver above him to the point that you're flexing him. Romeo Dubs has done nothing but deserve every reason to be a must-start player every single week.
Yeah, and the matchup.
He's getting targets. He's producing with them. Great matchup. He's catching touchdowns. All of it. Did so with Watson back. Did so with a healthy Jaden Reed. So. And much love to you, Tom, because thank you for your commitment. Have a blessed Sunday. You as well. And I should have mentioned, too, at the top of the hour, shout out to all my Canadian brethren, the homeboys from up north living it with me. Canadian Thanksgiving weekend. Get your turkeys in. Much love, much respect. Spend some time with the family. Enjoy that extra day off on Monday. We got you. I also have Kamara if that impacts the Olave side of the decision. And you having Kamara doesn't necessarily, I think you should start Kamara. Absolutely. So one wide receiver, one flex, Wilson, Hall, in the flexing Hall, starting Kamara and somebody better. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily I don't think that you're covering two sides of the game theory there, like a question earlier where with Cup and Nakua, where you're getting the floor and the ceiling. You just don't know which one of the players is going to produce which one, but in conjuncture, those two guys are going to put up the same points that Puka was putting up alone. And not to mention also that Tutu Atwell had some standout games, right? So you can't really say that with Kamara and Olave. I actually think Kamara being in the lineup kind of nukes Olave further if they're not pushing the ball downfield. Happy week 5 to you, Charles. Much love, much respect, brother. Good to have you in here, as always, a regular. Dominique, good morning, guys. How do you feel? Jordan Addison or Jacoby Myers, half PPR? The Vikings playing the Chiefs in what is expected to be a shootout, the highest over-under total of the week, followed only by the Rams and Eagles. Again, why I was kind of pushing back on Vic a little bit there. But we have a 52.5 point over. Chiefs favored by 3.5. Obviously, the Vikings have to throw and are going to throw regardless of what the score is, as we've seen. But then you've got Jacoby Myers playing Monday night. Green Bay Packers, also a great matchup. A high upside sleeper in our sleepers and bust column this week.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
For me, honestly, not even close. It's not even close for me. I'm starting Jacoby Myers every single week, especially this week. Jacoby Myers is perennially underrated. He's never the sexy play, but all he has done in his career is produce. And with the 2 games that he's had with Jimmy Garoppolo, he had 22 targets in 2 games. I mean, it's a 2-man show. It's Adams and it's Myers and a sprinkle of Josh Jacobs, right? But and maybe more than a sprinkle at this point. But the point is that he's going to get his 10 targets. He's going to get a shit ton of looks. Jordan Addison still hasn't beat out KJ Osborne. And with the size differential, I don't know if it ever happens, quite frankly, but I'm optimistic that he'll start playing in 2 wide receiver sets maybe someday. But yeah, Jacoby Myers for me. Obviously, Addison, I think, carries more big playability, but even in half PPR, I'm going to take the surefire volume. I do like a little asterisk. I do like Addison this week, not necessarily because of the shootout potential, which obviously that's great, but he put up a dud last week. And historically, when wide receivers put up a dud, they normally get some more. I mean, they have to get more love the next week, but I think quarterbacks have a tendency to get the ball to their guy, the week after they did not do it. So I like him for a really good bounce back game for a bunch of reasons. So I understand why the question is here, but for me, it's Jacoby Myers by a landslide.
Yeah, and shout out to our boy Boyd, who wrote about Jacoby as his high upside sleeper at wide receiver this week. averaging 13.7 half PPR points per game. Good shout out for the half PPR, which obviously is very solid. Going to put you in that wide receiver 2, high wide receiver 3 range. And that includes obviously a wide receiver 3 overall finish in week 1, his concussion game, unfortunately missing the next game and then coming back to play with Aiden O'Connell. But as Vic mentioned, in seeing an insane amount of targets, with Jimmy G, and when he is healthy, 26 targets in 3 games to be exact, which is terrific. You're averaging, over 8 targets a game. And I think this is going to continue again as the Raiders face off against the Packers. A rare cross conference. Is that how you say that? Yeah. Interconference would be the same conference. Yeah. So like a pretty rare cross-conference matchup between these two franchises historically have like not played each other a lot at all. And I kind of like when the NFL does little things like this where they dive a little deeper in the schedule just from a fan. There's no fantasy narrative to it, but just as a fan standpoint, it's cool to have like teams that literally have like a 2-2 historic record against each other play in a cross-conference matchup. So I do like that. And the Packers defense has as many holes in it as their fans' cheesehead hats. Shout out Boyd's Bar there. They're giving up plenty of fantasy points to opposing offenses. 372 total yards. That's 22nd in the league. So a bottom 10 defense, and 24 points per game, 20th in the league, kind of middle of the pack, but 24 points per game is still nothing to be shied away from. And they're the 5th easiest matchup in terms of true matchup rank, giving up 31.4% over average to the wide receiver position. And obviously, as we mentioned at the top of the hour, and we'll mention a few more times as we go through the discussion, getting back into some of that injury news, is that Jimmy G is fully ready to go, cleared concussion protocol, and will officially be the starter on Sunday. So I really like Jacoby Myers here. It was a long way of both of us saying start Jacoby for sure, but yeah, it's Jacoby. Yeah. And we got another one from Charles, my boy. Full PPR, would you roll with Gus Edwards or play it risky with Javonte Williams? I think I'm going to risk it for the biscuit here.
What if he goes,
yeah. Are they same slate games? Do we have a?
I am not sure about the timing of them. Actually,
Denver plays the late slate and Gus plays early. I think with just that game theory, I'm going to play Gus Edwards.
Yeah.
Knowing that you're in a tighter pickle if Javonte doesn't go or gets injured even in pregame warmups, which has happened a lot of times.
Yeah.
So yeah, just knowing that you need that floor of points in general, any points.
Yeah.
Whereas Javonte could leave you with 0. Playing. Yeah, I think Gus playing that early slate kind of makes that game theory lean a little bit more towards him. Jake from IT, he has a disgusting decision to make in his flex. Tony, Juju, or Bateman? I don't want to give up on any of these guys.
Goodness gracious. I would flex Kadarius Toney. Because at least, he's only in the game 25% of the time, but they put him in the game in situations where they're normally trying to get him the ball. And he hasn't made any big splash plays yet, and he hasn't scored yet. Like most Kansas City wide receivers,
maybe
not having, I don't know, like he was so big for them in the playoffs. I know this whole, it doesn't matter. I don't like Juju in the situation. I don't like any of it. Obviously, that's why it's disgusting, right? But I think I would go Tony just because he's on the best offense, what I believe to be the best offense out of all these 3. You could make a case for Baltimore, but Rashad Bateman
has the best matchup of them all as well.
Yeah, true. Yep. So
not that he's the wide receiver 1 where you can actually, that's where, and I will concede that like that's where true matchup rank is such a great tool, but you also have to keep in mind that when it talks about wide receiver points, that's accounting for every wide receiver that had a point that game, right? So 45 points and 21.3% points over average or whatever is excellent when a team kind of funnels through one guy. Like when you have Stephon Diggs, like, boom, this is a matchup. When you have a CeeDee Lamb, boom, this is the matchup. But when it's a spread offense and guys, everybody getting 4 targets, 2 targets, 3 targets, and then Kelsey getting 13, that's when that gets a little more difficult to actually say that Tony has the best matchup. But for true matchup ranks purposes, he absolutely does.
Yeah. And Juju's just a flat line at this point, and Bateman hasn't looked the same since coming back from injury, and has been underwhelming. So Tony can give you a 0. I mean, that needs to be noted. He could play I mean, 2 weeks ago he played 2 snaps. So there's no guarantee of anything, but if the floors are all so low with these guys, I'm going to take the highest ceiling, and to me, that's Kadarius Toney.
Yeah, I will say that I still love Shoddy B, and I think that he could have a career resurgence. But coming into this season with a Liz Frank after being hurt his first 2 years, yeah, it's not great. Not great at all. Oh, skipped off it. Let's click back on there. My man, Motion Man, PPR start Ertz, Waller, or Jake Ferguson. I'm going to take over on this one because we went through the Darren Waller bust segment that I had written about, where I don't really think Darren Waller is a player that you can start until the Giants begin to fix the holes in their leaking ship that is the offense. And I really, really like Zach Ertz this week. It's kind of why I really like Michael Wilson as well. But Ertz, again, just criminally undervalued and underappreciated for the consistent production he brings to the table from a position that is virtually barren of meaningful fantasy assets at that. He's been a major fixture in the Cardinals offense. There's no denying it. 30 total targets. That's tight end 2, an elite 24.1% target share. That's obviously tight end 1 this season, and a target rate of 27.3%. That's targets on routes run. That's tight end 3. He's run 110 total routes, tight end 12, 89.4% route participation. He's their wide receiver 2, obviously more than Michael Wilson and more than Rondale Moore. And that's tight end 6 total, 84 slot snaps, tight end 5 total. His participation has been sensational, and 7.7 yard ADOT, 23.7% of his team's total air yards, top 5 in both red zone opportunities, 5 total, and deep targets, 3 total amongst positional peers. He's got such a good matchup this week. The Cardinals stay home. They host a downtrodden Bengals squad who are also 1-3, and Vegas betting lines do favor the Bengals by a mere 3 points, a lowly over-under total projected of 45.5 points. So not really the best place to look for high upside scoring, but I think it's a little bit different when it comes to Ertz. As bad as the Bengals offense has been through the first 4 games, they have been absolutely horrendous at defending against tight ends as well. They rank second in true matchup rank to tight ends. They concede 12.6 points per game after allowing touchdowns to Harrison Bryant in week 1, Mark Andrews in week 2, and Josh Wiley in week 4. And the only game that they didn't allow a touchdown was week 3 when Tyler Higbee went 5 for 71, and what was obviously his best game of the season so far. Ertz has secured 6 receptions in 3 of his first 4 games. He's had 10, 8, and 10 targets in those contests where he's had at least 6 receptions. He's their tight end 1, their wide receiver 2. I think you have to start Ertz everywhere here.
Yeah, it works for me. I was gonna say Ertz. I was gonna say Ertz pretty easily, which I once again don't like benching Darren Waller, but
we got to get the content promos in when they line up.
Yeah, of course. My dad texted me yesterday and was like, "Hey, I picked up Zach Ertz. Do you like that play?" And I'm like, I'm surprised he wasn't rostered already. Because
main event,
because he has been this was a main event. This was his own home league.
Okay,
but so it's not premium or anything, but he's been a reliable option week in and week out, and
so is Jake Ferguson.
That's true. That is true, and he has the red zone appeal. I get that, but I love, like you were saying, I don't have to say much more, but Ertz's matchup is good. He's been getting the volume, so I'm down there.
Good morning, Alejandro. Always good to see you up in this chat, man. I'm glad you're hanging out with us. Hope you got your breakfast, your coffees, whatever you need for the day, because we got the start, sit, answers. Big Will up in here. Can't believe I'm asking this now, but he needs flex. And a flex. Help in PPR, Jerick McKinnon, Jameson Williams, Darren Waller, or Cortland Sutton. McKinnon?
In this situation, I'm going Sutton, actually.
Okay. That was literally it's between McKinnon and Sutton here. Jameson Williams, again, like 20 snaps is what you're looking at. And his targets per route run isn't like a sticky stat yet because he's only played, and ran 30 routes in his entire NFL career. I like Jerick McKinnon. I like Cortland Sutton. I think Sutton, again, still the Jets defense is a little bit of a scary place to look, but probably has a very similar floor to Jerick McKinnon and certainly a higher ceiling, I guess. Like he is their wide receiver 1.
McKinnon has just been like absolutely nothing unless he's finding his way into the end zone.
Which which this is one of those games where it seems like everybody's got
and especially a Jerick McKinnon revenge game, in case anyone remembers that he used to play on the Vikings. Actually, you might be swinging me. I just his floor is so minimal thus far in the season. And it's just there's no I don't think his ceiling is like so much more than Cortland Sutton that if you're chasing ceiling, that he's that like maybe if this were the last 6 weeks of last year, but it's not. It's a new year. It's a new team apparently. I mean, not new because they're playing everything the same except for the running back situation, it seems. So, yeah, I probably still stick Cortland Sutton, but I am feeling a little warm on Jerick McKinnon now that I've said some things out loud. But yeah, I'm going Cortland Sutton here.
Word. We got my boy Megabrick in the chat saying good morning, rocking the classic hat style, my all black Denver Nuggets with the Nikola Jokic MVP signature. Yeah. And which team do you support? I mean, NBA, Denver Nuggets, NFL, New Orleans Saints, NHL, in case you were wondering, Calgary Flames. And why am I all over the place? Because I'm also a Rockies fan. Is because I grew up in Sackville, New Brunswick on the Atlantic Ocean in Canada, on the far east coast of Canada. So I picked whatever teams I wanted.
Fair enough.
Alejandro in here. I just wanted to hop in and give Megabrick a little bit of justification there. Full PPR, start one for my flex. Zay Flowers, Christian Watson, Raheem Mostert. It get crazy with Jameson Williams. I don't think you should get crazy or cute. I think right now, you're in between Flowers and Mostert for me. And I'm going to have to take a second to think about it.
I am probably starting. I'm probably going to go.
I think I'm starting Raheem.
Yeah, I'll go Raheem Mostert. Honestly, I'm looking at Christian Watson, but just because we don't know, and even in his limited work, he still found the end zone last week, which we know is not sticky, but and it was wide the fuck open. Christian Watson just has crazy fucking upside, and I think I am hoping that he has a solid floor. But I like the matchup on Monday night. However, Mostert, it's like the guy was the RB1 overall until last week. And I understand that with Achane and his whole business that everyone is like pretending like Mostert doesn't exist anymore. I still think it's around a 50-50 split. I still think he has very solid floor and solid upside. It's you want any piece of that offense. And so I'm totally okay with Mostert, even in PPR and stuff like that, because he's been getting receiving work. He's always effective when he's healthy. He just had some, last week was his fumbling issues, right? He had last week he had 2 fumbles, which did not help his playing time and maybe got him in the doghouse a little bit. But I still don't think Achane is going to run away with this job. I just don't think that's how the offense is going to be catered to. If it ain't broke, don't fix it type situation. Like they want to keep everybody healthy. They want to keep, maybe a hot hand, but I think Mostert can and will have games where he is the hot hand. So, even though Achane looks really good, but so I'm okay with Mostert in this situation, but I think Christian Watson is a valid play. I also think Zay Flowers is valid. Like, so good on you for having a team like this where you have this much versatility.
These are flex plays as well, so you got to keep in mind that you might want to be chasing the ceiling, which I obviously think would be between Watson and Mostert, as we mentioned. So it's a gut there. I think I'm still leaning Mostert. I understand the Watson appeal. I don't, but I will say I don't want to get crazy with especially these options and put Jameson Williams ahead of anything.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
No, but I'm biased. I'm not a big Jameson Williams fan in general. So I need to see it first is what I'm trying to say in this situation.
Same. I never was a big Jameson Williams fan. Najee Harris, Alexander Madison, or Miles Sanders, half PPR from my boy Daniel England.
So for me, it is not Miles Sanders off rip, which hurts me.
That groin injury is still existing, as we mentioned, top of the hour.
And they're playing
still
Detroit,
dealing with
right?
a negative groin injury, got out carried and out touched by Chuba Hubbard. Yeah, obviously leading to what I just mentioned, played terribly. So Chuba was getting the looks there. Najee is just such a gross play against New Orleans, who, no, I will concede, Or wait, they played the Ravens. That's right.
Yeah.
I will concede either way. My statement's going to stand. I will concede that the Ravens are not as historically of a terrific run defense as they have usually have been. Same thing goes for the Saints this season, but obviously still a great defensive run front and not a great place for Najee Harris to get his sort of positive regression bounce back performance. I think Alexander Mattison in a shootout who has, even with, Cam Akers suiting up for his first game and getting some looks and having a 8.0 yards per carry and having a pretty decent game for his minimal touches, it was still very much Alexander Madison's show. And I think Kevin O'Connell wants to instill confidence in that kid after seeing, it's a weird narrative, but I'm going to roll with it anyway. After seeing like what he went through on social media and then the fumble game where he actually had a phenomenal game, but, had that bad fumble. Like, I think they still want to trust in this guy. And there's a reason that they let Dalvin Cook walk and didn't let him walk. And all the games that he produced without Dalvin, like I still think Alexander Mattison for a season long play is much better than his current range of outcomes would suggest. And I probably do favor him over these two guys in half PPR this week.
Yeah. I'm probably leaning Madison as well. I do think Najee, even though I don't like him, has, he's got flex appeal, but yes. I mean, Madison has been an RB2. This is PPR. I'm not sure he fares in half PPR, but in PPR, he's been an RB2 or better in 3 out of the 4 weeks so far this year. And none of these guys are a sexy play. So, I don't know. We don't love Najee around here. So I think I feel more comfortable about Madison because I don't think, like I said earlier, I don't remember what the situation was, but it's not like you're missing out on major upside for either player. So in that case, I'll just take the safer floor in Madison. And I just think he's generally the better player anyway in a pretty, you would hope it to be a close matchup and not so far gone that they have to pass and he doesn't get a crazy amount of work. But so yeah, I'm going to go Madison here.
Yeah, and I will say too that true matchup rank favors Najee, who has Baltimore at 12th to running backs, whereas Madison has the Chiefs, who are 28th to running backs. But again, they are also, the Kansas City Chiefs are much weaker to the passing running back, and Madison has shown some utility in the passing game, and we expect a high shootout with lots of passing volume on both sides with touchdown upside for all players. Magic brick, both fire. I'm in a real bad spot this week. That's why we're here, brother. Coming off a 200-point week. Well, you're in a good spot. So let's get that rolling again. Joshua Palmer and Godwin on a bye. Higgins out. Flex Dotson accidentally. Now I have Tutu starting. Not really a question, and I will concede that is a terrible spot.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
So next, he's going, do I roll with Tutu or stream one of the following? Tony, Lazard, Khalif Raymond, Josh Downs, Marvin Mimsicle. Obviously, Kupp coming back, going to limit a lot of that Tutu streaming viability, or so you would assume. Broncos at the Jets, where Mims hasn't really been running the routes. He still is leading the team in yards because of they should be making him run more routes, almost in a Gabe Davis sense. I guarantee that next year, if this continues for Mims, like rest of season, next year he's going to be this 2 years ago Gabe Davis, whatever. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Because that will not be an overly positive range of outcomes for his dynasty profile if he doesn't actually increase this target share and routes run.
Is Khalif Raymond goofy? Is it goofy?
No, it's not. Against the Panthers, it's not at all. And I was actually, we were rounding it out, but I think that's I think there's some upside in Lazard against the Broncos, as I kind of mentioned earlier, that every Jets player should be considered almost at their ceiling against this team.
Yeah.
But I think Khalif Raymond with no Amon-Ra, no Jahmyr Gibbs against the Panthers, which are obviously a great team to stream points against, and Tutu seeing Kupp come back, I don't think it's a crazy play. I really don't.
I mean,
in fact, my point is that's who I'm picking.
In terms of true matchup rank, I guess Carolina is not good for wideouts. 29th most favorable. So
because of how easy it is to run on them.
Least favorite. Yeah.
Facts though. Yeah.
And you did point out Lazard. I don't trust Zach Wilson yet. That scares the living shit out of me. It's just a much better matchup. So
it's not even a trust Zach Wilson thing. It is legitimately just like the Broncos thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So even with a terrible on paper matchup, you would still go Khalif Raymond over Alan Lazard.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I vouch. I started off by saying that. Like, I think.
Yeah. I mean,
I just know
genuinely,
that.
I think it's one of those. Yeah, it is one of those. For lack of a better term, it's a gambler's play. It's
Yeah.
absolutely a gambler's play. But I think Tutu actually is presenting a very low floor for you right now.
Sure. Yeah, and he's been really good, but the Cup just shakes everything up, and maybe he's established a role at this point, and he can still be good, but I would rather take a shot. Like Khalif Raymond gets work here and there every week anyway, and now it should just be elevated. He should be the more intermediate role with guys like
Josh
Jameson
Reynolds
Williams.
for the same reason.
And yep. I was just gonna say Josh Reynolds. He's of course
And
I have an opponent. Sorry I'm gonna go on a tangent. I have an opponent who I should have just dog walked him. Like he had injuries and he had people on bye, and he just so happened to have Josh Reynolds and Matt Breida on his bench. So now he just gets free fill-ins, like with Amon Ra out and Barkley out, and it's like, what the fuck, man? Like,
That's
why
brutal.
is this my luck? But yeah, I like Khalif Raymond. I'm gonna go Khalif Raymond.
Yeah, I agree. And for anybody that's kind of in a similar situation, Josh Reynolds is definitely worth a look. Alejandro back in here with a couple more. And wow, if you weren't in here, Alejandro, Bick dropped a little bit of insider information earlier. I will hop back to your last question. I promise that. But what the fuck happened to Olave? Why is he looking injured in warmups? Bick said he had a man on the front lines texting him this morning who was inside of the Saints Stadium saying that Olave was talking with trainers about a potential injury and is now, might be nursing something from not last game, but even the game prior. I got a train going by, so
yeah.
But yeah, that's what's going on. He's looking injured because he is.
Yeah.
Despite not being on the injury report. But I don't like to necessarily even like dog a franchise, especially when I'm a huge fan of them. But like, look at how they're treating that Derek Carr injury. And then, look at how they treated the Michael Thomas situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like Chris Olave not winding up on the injury report and being injured doesn't surprise me in the least. And they will face fines for that.
Yeah.
Back to your question. Last one, half PPR, Wandale or Addison. I think it's Addison still. I'm not trusting in. I'm absolutely in love with Wandale Robinson, and I think he's going to keep continually linearly transgressing and progressing as kind of their wide receiver one, because Jalen Hyatt just ain't going to be it until he learns how to run more than one route than a 9. Obviously, Waller put into that route participation role and the pseudo wide receiver 1 role when now he just right in front of me when Wandale was dealing with his knee injury. So now that he's progressing in his health, in his comeback and his recovery as well, right? He tore his knee last year, knee surgery. I do like Wandale Robinson rest of season. Certainly somebody I'm stashing even in redraft leagues.
Yep.
Addison, though, is the play for me here. I like the Chiefs matchup too much to ignore Jordan Addison in a bounce back game.
Yeah, agreed.
And we do have Clay confirming that Gibbs and Barkley officially inactive. Indeed, my brother. John DePinto, Deebo Samuel, or Michael Wilson, the flex. He is worried about Dallas's defense against the 49ers, as am I, a little bit. I think the more so thing to worry about is that Deebo Samuel has never been the wide receiver 1 in the 49ers, and the one that actually is fully healthy and no longer in Shanahan's doghouse because he can run block like a motherfucker.
Yeah.
And that's Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah.
Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey severely limit Deebo Samuel's upside, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm still starting him every week. I can't bench him. Not yet. He's shown that he's still a fucking dog. It doesn't. I'm starting Deebo every week. Okay. Sure.
Deebo or Michael Wilson flex. Oh yeah. All right. I'll go with the Deebo. I'm with you. I just wanted to throw out some.
Would you actually consider Michael Wilson over Deebo in the flex this week?
I just wanted to throw out some Brandon Ayuk love.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure. Okay.
Everywhere.
Okay. I just want to make sure. All right.
I just had to. No, of course. It's still Deebo over Michael Wilson. Although, again, we mentioned a couple of questions back. Like, I think Michael Wilson's going to continue to grow his utility within that offense.
We We also mentioned a couple questions back that I think historically when wide receivers put up a dud, they normally bounce back the next week because their quarterback wants to get them some love, and that's what we just got. So I think Debo is good in that regard too, putting up like 0.6 last week or something.
Tim and Clay up in here talking about Najee's LP limited practice on Friday with a hamstring, but avoiding an injury designation this Sunday. Yeah, he's still not somebody that I'm overly interested in. We got 10 minutes left. I think I'm at the bottom of the page. Get your questions coming. Keep them coming. You got 10 minutes for dynasty questions too. We don't usually touch on that this show, but I'm here. Take advantage of it. Kicker questions. I'll just pull up Linda Lyons rankings, but kicker questions, defense questions, because she's the GOAT, bro. Her hit rate for kickers is unfathomable. Nobody should be that good at any positional rankings.
That's ridiculous.
Let alone like the most hectic one, but she's absolutely the best ever. If nobody's hopping in, I will run through some of our sleepers and busts. I'll touch on the ones that we wrote. I had Matthew Stafford as my high upside quarterback sleeper this week. He's long been a kingmaker for his wideouts. Like, he has supported the two greatest wide receiver seasons of all time. That's Calvin Johnson 2012, Cooper Kupp 2022, debate a wall, while currently upholding the greatest rookie breakout in NFL history. That one's not up for debate because no wide receiver in the history of the NFL has ever done what Puka Nacua has done through the first 4 games, leads or sets the record for most receptions, most targets, 501 yards through 4 games. Sadly, Stafford himself constantly overlooked and now dealing with some injuries, so getting downgraded, justifiably so, I'll concede, this week. But the gumptious gunslinger, as I like to call him, is staring down the pipeline of a fantasy-friendly matchup and should have every manager's attention heading into week 5. They play host to the Eagles with the visiting team. That's the Eagles, favored by 4.5, so 49.5 points. That's the second highest over under of the week. Should be a good shootout, and the Rams should play from behind. Their passing volume has already been incredible. Kyron Williams obviously seeing a massive opportunity share, getting some backfield work, but still that offense running through the air, so to speak. And a close game against that defense with Kupp getting with Stafford getting Cooper Kupp back. Just an embarrassment of riches for him to outproduce his expectations this week. Eagles defense giving up 260.8 passing yards, 27th, so a bottom 5 passing defense. They allow 22.5 points per game. That's 16th, so right in the middle of the pack, a little below that 24.0 mark that I was referring to a couple questions ago, where you like to see, there's nothing to be when you're attacking defenses that might have a middle of the range rank, but that 24 points per game is right around where you want to go for when you're attacking matchups. And 20.6 points per game to opposing quarterbacks so far this season. As far as fantasy is concerned, that's 4th in true matchup rank, a points over average rating of 54.4%. Increasingly encouraging is that only 1.4 points per game of those 20.6 points per game to opposing quarterbacks has come on the ground. So 19.2 points per game of passing production. They are very much a statues matchup. So I really, really like Matthew Stafford this week. Big fan of him in general this season. He told us all offseason that he wasn't going to retire, that his elbow and shoulder were better than ever. Now he's dealing with other injuries that are, hindering a little bit for sure. And still, you'd like to see that turnover worthy play come down. 5 interceptions to only 3 touchdowns so far this season. Not where you want to, go for streaming quarterbacks, but man, there's no better matchup and gets his full array of weapons left. I love Matt Stafford this week. Alejandro back in here with one more full PPR start 2, Gus Edwards, Jacoby Meyer. Did I skip that one? I may have skipped that one.
It popped up once you started talking about your Matt Stafford play.
Might have double popped, but I think we touched on that one. Oh yeah, it's Jacoby, and then wait, I don't know if we did touch on this one. Okay, well, so let's just run it over again. Full PPR start 2, Gus Edwards, Jacoby Myers, Wandale Robinson, or Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, we didn't touch on it. It had popped up when you were talking about Stafford, so it's new. I would do Jacoby Myers, and I would I am probably Jerry Jeudy. His volume and work has not been what I had hoped it would have been. Last year he was the one guy that was like Nate Hackett proof. Like him and Russ had a great connection last year, and he was reliable, and he was putting up at least double-digit fantasy points almost every week of the season. And this year, that has not really been the case, but that team has been in flux. Somehow it feels maybe worse than last year. I'm not really sure. It's really weird,
Yeah,
maybe
it's
just as bad.
strange. Because it's the defense now instead of the offense. When they were legitimately last season, the offense was averaging something like 11.8 points per game for like the first 10 games. And if they had averaged 12, they would have won 7 of those 10 games.
Yeah. But and even though against the Jets, I just don't trust. I'm not starting Gus Edwards in this situation, and I'm not sure I trust Wandale just yet. His volume has been good. It's been the opposite of Jerry Jeudy. He came back and has made a pretty decent impact.
Yeah.
And PPR is the type of league where you want to start Wandale Robinson, especially against Miami. It's just that Jerry Judy's the better, in my opinion, the better player, and I'm hoping that this is the week where we see things start to get better and change. And it's not exactly as scientific as one might like. It's kind of just a gut feeling for me. I try to be as by the books and as by the numbers as possible, but my gut is on Jerry Jeudy in this one. And if it makes you feel better, it might not, but I'm benching Jerry Jeudy, which means he's probably going to do something good this week. That's just a deep team, so I have some tough decisions to make. But if I'm benching him, it means he'll probably be pretty good. So another non-scientific, another
guarantee.
Yeah, another non-scientific rationale in this case. But
yeah, and I mean, I'm probably a little more bullish on Wandale as well, as I touched back on when we had the Wandale Addison question. So I hope you were still in here for that one, Alejandro. So you got a bit of that breakdown attached to this. Obviously, Jacoby Myers is the must start here. So that's an immediate slide. And you have Jacoby between Edwards, Wandale, and Jeudy. I will go and agree with my boy Bick here, but I think I'm a little more bullish on Wandale. So if you have a gut feeling, Alejandro, that it should be Wandale over Jeudy, do it.
Yeah, I can't hate it. And on the sheer volume play, I totally get it. Because he's been getting volume in limited work, and you know, I don't know. It's just
end of that.
Yeah,
he's been getting volume.
I don't know.
He's been getting volume, and Waller's has been dissipating. And obviously those routes are going to continue to increase as he's healthy. Hi. Hello, Nathan. How are you, my brother? Zay Flowers or Christian Watson? It's a standard league, so really we're just looking at yardage totals. Who do you project with a higher yardage total today between Zay Flowers and Christian Watson? I guess one of those would technically be tomorrow.
Yeah. For me, it's Watson. I mean, Zay Flowers is a PPR guy with too low of an ADOT, so I would probably take the shot on Watson because he's the big play guy in the situation. And yeah, I mean,
I think I'm going to have to agree with that too. I'm going to go with Christian Watson. The return of Odell Beckham Jr. and Rashad Bateman doesn't necessarily move the needle much for me away from Flowers to detract me in a similar start sit that might not be a guy like Christian Watson in a standard league. Who knows? But for that matter, I would go standard, or in a standard, I would go Christian Watson because I think the yardage total definitely favors him, because even in limited routes and limited snaps, obviously he has that 48-yard, 52-yard, 56-yard, however many there were last season, touchdown ability, right? So you have to lean with that. And considering that Watson's big plays are often attached to the additional 6 points that you're adding in a standard league, yeah, you definitely got to go with Christian Watson here.
Yep.
Mitchell Evans, the last one that we got with 2 minutes left. I'll give the shout outs and the love and everything. Forgot to say hello. He knew the rules. Forgot to say hello. Much love, brother. Thank you. We'll get to this one and we'll hop into your last one, and then we'll say our goodbyes and hop out. Stevenson or Garrett Wilson in my flex, half PPR. I'm thinking you take it, because I'm thinking it's Garrett Wilson.
Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, man. And we're both big Ramondre guys in this room. There's no denying that. I'm not giving up. I'm not even feeling like that deterred from it. It's just, look at how bad that offense was, man. And like, he's still getting all of that was the game that Zeke was the starter.
Yep.
And when we told you, on last episodes, like that's just coach speak. Like, it's, if Zeke was the starter, the touches would start be going in his direction. And as the starter, he got fewer snaps and fewer touches in comparison to Ramondre than any game of the season. So with that said, Ramondre Stevenson, I still feel great about rest of the season, man. I still do. I know that upside is there. We're still a small sample, only 4 weeks in. Ramondre put up those big games mid-season, and that's what height, lifted his
Yeah.
ADP to where he is. Like, don't get so detract from RB2 overall, or well, RB 26, whatever, in an RB2 range tier
Right.
for the first 4 games is basically my
Yep.
point. Garrett Wilson this week, yes, but had to give some love to our boy. And then back in here with his last one before we give the shout outs and the love, different team altogether. Alexander Madison, Garrett Wilson, Hollywood Brown, Jacoby Myers, Adam Thielen, at a flex. This team obviously pretty deep, has some good top end scorers on it in your wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, RB1, whatever. It's half PPR. The guy that we were leaning on pretty heavily in a lot of these was Jacoby Myers. I still think over Thielen, over Hollywood, that's a pretty safe. But now that we have Garrett Wilson and Alexander Madison added into the mix, are we fading that Zach Wilson line that much that against the Broncos we want to start a guy like Jacoby over Garrett Wilson?
I'm okay starting Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, me too. I think it's Garrett Wilson as well, brother.
Yeah. He's just the best talent, that is in front of us right now. I think Hollywood is interesting.
I don't know why I'm even throwing my boy to the side like that. Like me loving Hollywood as much as I do, and him being wide receiver 17 overall, 16.5 points per game over the last 3. Like, yeah, I mean, Hollywood is a very interesting one,
and,
actually.
Like Cincinnati's beatable through the air and beatable everywhere right now. And if there's a world where Cincinnati can get the ball moving and can put up points like we expect them to do, which without T. Higgins, it'll be a bit more tough. And with Joe Burrow being hobbled, I get it. But if they can make the game competitive, then I think Hollywood's interesting. That's all. I'm not sure I'm necessarily saying start him over Garrett Wilson, but
that line, that Zach Wilson line is getting a little higher. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm not
for sure.
Yeah, it's tough, but I guess Garrett Wilson, I mean, he's still getting.
I still think I'm gonna. Yeah. We're just agreeing in one word. Yeah. For sure, though, man. Well, that's gonna do it for us, boys. We got no more questions. If you got any more questions while I'm saying our goodbyes, please slide them in, and I'll hit them right before we close that end stream button. But much love, much respect. Thanks for coming in. Same bat time, same bat channel next week. YouTube.com/BroToFantasy, Crunch Time Live. Answer any and all start sit questions, any fantasy related questions, and sports questions in general, as we had about my hat today. You can find me at PsychWardFF. You can find him all over the place, being as cool as he is. Twitter.com or X, whatever you call it nowadays, at BroToFantasy is where you can find the main handle, and at FF by Broto for all and any app related questions. Brotofantasy.com, and then patreon.com/BrotoFantasy. A little as $3 a month. You get to hop in the mailbag, get all of these questions asked early, and then additionally asked, if you're still wondering, on Sundays, you get access to the Discord, obviously, for those mailbag questions. A great community of betting, of all sports. We got basketballs coming up soon. We'll be talking about that a lot in the Discord. Mike's always kicking off great baseball fantasy content. So hop into the Discord for all of that. Best community out there. Again, much love. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. Have a great Sunday. Best of luck. Week 5. Peace.